Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the press conference of the beginning of the Brazilian Security Council presidency in July. We have here today with us Ambassador Ronaldo Costa, Permanent Representative of Brazil to the United Nations, accompanied by Ambassador João Genésio de Almeida, Deputy Permanent Representative of Brazil to the United Nations, and Political Coordinator, Minister Paula Alves. I have the honor to invite the ambassador to take the floor for initial remarks and to brief you on our recently adopted program of work. Afterwards, we will be happy to take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you all for showing up. We have not too long, so I'm just going to try and race a bit through what has been included in the program of work. Very briefly, and then I'll be open to questions. Let me, before beginning on the program of work, underline our profound gratitude to Ambassador Ferit Hoxha of Albania and his team for a very successful conduct of the presidency in June, a very challenging month with a very dense agenda before the Council. First order of business to say we have circulated as presidency our informal working methods commitments, which is something the presidencies circulate. Quick highlights on that. First, to establish a balance between open and closed meetings. I know from your side, open meetings are always preferable because of transparency, but we have to have a balance because closed meetings are sometimes more appropriate in dealing with very delicate and challenging issues. So we will strive to have a balance of both. Second element is to try and foster greater cooperation between the Security Council and the other main bodies of the United Nations. And here we have a particular emphasis on the Peace Building Commission, which Brazil feels can make a comprehensive contribution to discussions in the Security Council, in particular in the context of renewal of peacekeeping and political missions. Thirdly, to incorporate a gender perspective as a cross-cutting issue throughout our presidency in all items of the agenda, and reiterating Brazil's commitment to the Women, Peace and Security agenda. And finally, to invite civil society briefers into Council meetings whenever possible, so as the Council is better informed on different perspectives on each item on the agenda. In July, Brazil has planned two signature events. The adoption of one presidential statement, and in a very complex month, we have before us the renewal of 4 peacekeeping or special political missions, the renewal of 2 sanctions regimes, and 1 authorization of humanitarian assistance. And we will get to those one by one. The first, and I think the most salient issue, which I'm sure will interest you, is the issue of Ukraine, which is perhaps the most visible item on the Council's agenda today. Our plan is to have a meeting on Ukraine focused on the aspect of food security, which we feel is something that is impacting not only directly the populations of the region, but it is impacting the whole world. And we feel this is an issue that could give a welcome first step in the resolution of the conflict. Now it's a very delicate and sensitive issue. You're all aware that negotiations are ongoing on this issue, and the precise date of when this meeting would occur would depend on the evolution of those consultations and negotiations and being held in Europe. I'm going to apologize because I'm going to jump dates here because certain events had their planned dates changed this morning. So just to say that on the 20th of July, there's going to be consultations on the chemical weapons file on Syria, which is a monthly discussion on progress in that file. On the 6th of July, we will have the traditional luncheon with the Secretary General, which allows for an exchange of views between the SG and the members of the Council. On the 7th of July, we will have consultation, a briefing followed by consultations on UNOWAS, United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel, which is an important and complex file on the Council's agenda. And we are hoping and having our fingers crossed that we may, on the 7th of July, adopt the renewal of a resolution reauthorizing the humanitarian assistance to Syria, which, as you know, has two elements, the cross-border and the cross-line, which are object of discussion between members. I say hopefully because 7th of July is Thursday, and we have a long weekend ahead. 8th of July is a holiday, and the current authorization expires on the 10th of July, which is Sunday. So in the interest of not having to work on the long weekend, we are hoping for adoption on the 7th. On 11th of July, the following week, we will have a regular briefing followed by consultations on Yemen. On the 12th of July, we will have the first of Brazil's signature events during our presidency. And this is going to be a high-level open debate on strategic communications in peacekeeping operations, which is something which sounds a bit arid, but is actually a very, very important issue in the deployment of peacekeeping missions, in that they can better adapt and craft their interaction and communication with local communities to ensure that the local communities understand what they are doing there, what are the limits of its actions, how it can support local communities, and so on. So we think this is something that is vital for a better operation of peacekeeping operations, and indeed for the safety of peacekeepers. This event will be presided over by Brazil's Foreign Minister, Carlos França, and the SG, Antonio Guterres, will be a briefer, along USG, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the force commander in the Democratic Republic of Congo, General Afonso da Costa, and the director from the IPI, General Russo. We also hope to conclude a presidential statement on this issue. On the 13th, the Syria file comes back in its elements of political and humanitarian aspects of the crisis in Syria. This date is also pretty heavy because we have a meeting with troop contributing countries that supply troops to the peacekeeping force in Cyprus, and we will have up for renewal the mandates of the United Nations Integrated Office in Haiti, BINU, and the UN mission to support the Hudaida agreements in Yemen, as well as the sanctions regime in Libya. 14th of July, also Colombia is on the agenda. We will have a meeting with the special representative of the SG. The meetings are held every 3 months. Now, this month's meeting is particularly significant because the Truth Commission has recently issued its final report, and the president of the Truth Commission will be invited, Father Deroux, to brief the Council alongside a representative from civil society. On the 18th, we have close consultations on the peacekeeping force in Cyprus. On the 19th, our second signature event, which will be the open debate on children and armed conflict. And this is to discuss the SG's latest report on this theme. And Brazil would like to focus in particular on three elements of this agenda, which are firstly, the protection of refugee, internally displaced and stateless children. Secondly, the abduction of children and its specific impacts on girls and boys. And thirdly, the reintegration of children and peace building. The discussion will be hosted by our Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Fernando Simões Magalhães, and we will have as briefers Ms. Virginia Gambas, Special Representative of the SG for Children and Armed Conflict, and Ms. Catherine Russell, Executive Director of UNICEF, alongside a representative from civil society. 25th of July, we will have briefings and consultations on UNSMIL, which is the United Nations Support Mission in Libya. 21st of July, consultations on the Office of the United Nations Special Coordinator for Lebanon. 22nd, Sudan. 26th, regular monthly open meeting on the Middle East. And on the 27th, as I said earlier, one issue to which Brazil attaches particularly importance, which is the interaction with the Peace Building Commission. So we will open the debate with the presentation of 2021 report of the Peace Building Commission, and we hope that this fosters a productive debate between members of the Council and other members on how the PBC can best support the work of the Council. 28th of July, consultations on the United Nations Regional Center for Preventive Diplomacy for Central Asia. And we will have also, hopefully, adoption of renewals of the peacekeeping force in Cyprus, UNFICYP, and the support mission in Libya, UNSMIL, as well as the sanctions regime for the Central African Republic. This is basically what is scheduled. Of course, events will also guide any adaptations we have to make to the agenda. I would just like to say that beyond the work, we will also be taking opportunity of the presidency to highlight a bit the cultural elements and promoting a bit and showing a bit of Brazil's culture and history. I am sure are all aware, 2022 marks the bicentennial of Brazil's independence. And what we have chosen to do to mark that event here at the UN is an exhibition paying tribute to the man behind Brazil's debut in multilateral diplomacy. Politician, diplomat, lawyer, and abolitionist Rui Barbosa, who was head of our delegation to the Hague Conference, Peace Conference of 1907, where he took the idea and the concept, which is still very dear to us and enshrined in the Charter of the UN, of sovereign equality among nations. So there will be an exhibition in the delegates' entrance between the two Portinari murals of War and Peace on the 12th of July, which beyond formally opening the meeting, we will have caipirinhas and some delicacies to mark the event. And I hope to see many of you there. That is what I would like to say. And please, any questions, I am delighted to answer.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador, on behalf of ANCA, and we wish you the best of luck for the month ahead. My question, Valeria Robeco from ANSA News Agency. My question is on Ukraine. Are you already planning some concrete steps on the wheat crisis here in occasion of the Security Council meeting? And if you do see chances of to open corridors for the export? Thank you so much.
Thank you. As I said, the Ukraine is the most visible issue on the Council's agenda. I don't wish to imply any kind of importance between one issue and another. Each member will have its own evaluation of what is more important, but certainly something that is very visible on the international agenda today. We have an evaluation that the Council has so far, when I have to be careful, I would say underperformed in the exercise of its mandate to maintain international peace and security on the issue of Ukraine. And what we would like to do, as I say, this is still an ambition, is to get the Council to focus a bit more on a concrete discussion of one element of the crisis, which, as I said earlier, is the food security issue, because this is something that is having an effect on Ukraine, it's having an effect on Russia, it's having an effect on Europe, but it's also having a very profound effect around the world due to the reduced availability of food for populations around the world. So we would like to get a discussion going within the Council with let me say, a result-oriented approach, trying to find solutions to the problems and not assigning blame, because I think that's not going to help solving the immediate problem. So concrete steps that we could take that would alleviate the food security issue. But as I said earlier, negotiations are ongoing. Very discreet negotiations with them. We know Turkey is being of enormous help, and Turkey, sorry, and the SG himself is personally involved in this. So what we are saying here is we are going to wait for the best time, according to the evaluation of those directly involved in those talks, as to when to bring it to the Security Council and try and get the Council more engaged in that file. Oh, sorry, here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. Could you give us an update on the Council discussions on a cross-border resolution for the delivery of aid to northwest Syria, which is another very contentious issue this month? Do you see any prospect of the renewal of the current mandate of one crossing from Turkey? And just to follow up on your cultural activities, I think you said you talked about the men behind Brazil's diplomacy. Weren't there any women?
Okay, thank you. I'll get to that right away. Let me just quickly speak about the cross-border. The pen holders for this issue are Ireland and Norway. They have had very extensive consultations for some time with all the members of the Council, trying to arrive at something that is broadly acceptable to everyone. On the basis of those consultations, they have circulated a first or a zero draft, as it's called. I would be hesitant to say exactly what the terms are of that. And what they tell me is that they are hopeful that this will be done without too much suffering within the timelines that are required. So, I mean, I take their word that things are going relatively well. It's a very sensitive, as you say. It has been the object of much contentious debate in the past. So we'll see, as I say. As as to the men, I didn't say the men. I say we've chosen to pay tribute to the man without diminishing the role of women. I don't know if you saw very recently we adopted the resolution on women in diplomacy, 24th of June being declared the Day of Women in Diplomacy. And we tweeted about this, and we are very proud of 3 women in particular who come to the fore of our mind in Brazil. The first is, I'm going to speak, and you'd have to check the exact dates, but we are proud of Maria de Castro Rabelo, who was the first public servant in Brazil, admitted by a public contest, not known, and she was a diplomat. And just for information, this was in 1918, and this was so out of the ordinary at that time that her nomination, she was approved in the public exams, but her appointment went all the way to the president, because having a female civil servant at that time was something quite extraordinary. We're also very proud of Odete, I've forgotten the surname, I'm sorry, Odete, I can find it for you, who was a career diplomat, and she was the first career diplomat in the world to ascend to the post of ambassador. And she was appointed as ambassador to Israel in 1959. And Odete de Carvalho, thank you. And the third person we are extremely proud of is Berta Lutz, who was part of our delegation to the San Francisco conference. And she is the person who insisted on the equality of rights between men and women. And if you're interested, there's a very good HBO documentary on her work in the San Francisco conference, which is a delight to see. So I'm not being gender insensitive.
I read about her and written about her. Berta.
Hi, Mr. Ambassador. This is De Xu with China Central Television. First, wish you a successful presidency. I have 2 questions. First, as the president, actually, I asked this question to Mr. Hoxha, the president of Albania, a month ago. We saw in many issues, the Security Council is quite divided. As a president, what's your plan to put them together to show the world the solidarity of the Council? And second question, in the capacity of Brazil, the Brazilian President Bolsonaro, during his visit, during the BRICS summit, he said emerging economies must join efforts toward reforming the United Nations to ensure they have proper representation. So can you give us some more detail or the idea how Brazil would see the reform of the United Nations? Thank you very much.
Thank you. On the issue of division, it is a fact, that it's very clear to anyone who looks at the workings of the Council that, particularly since the invasion of Ukraine, the situation has become very, very split within the Security Council. It's very difficult to get the agenda moving forward. But I would refer you back to the statements Brazil has made since the very beginning of the crisis, in which we have always advocated that the only way to find solutions is to get people around the table to talk. And that in this effort, we believe very strongly that finger pointing is not helpful in any way. So what Brazil will continue to do in its exercise of the presidency is to try and get people around the table to discuss the issues in an open and frank manner. That's the only way we can move forward, through diplomacy and negotiation. On the participation of emerging economies, this is a long-standing objective of Brazil, and it goes much beyond the United Nations. I mean, Brazil has for a long time been an advocate that international organizations as a whole have to adapt to a new reality, a new geopolitical reality. We have had some progress, particularly in the economic arena, with the G20 emerging as an important element of macroeconomic governance, and the rebalancing of voting shares at the IMF and the World Bank. The one place where no progress whatsoever has been achieved thus far is in the UN, and for that we really feel that a reform of the composition of the Security Council is urgently required, so as to take into account this new reality of emerging economies having a more important participation in contributing to the maintenance of international peace and security. Negotiations have been going on for 30 years, and we are still hopeful.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News, and good luck on the month. My question is about non-proliferation. You may have mentioned it, but do you have, since Iran talks are going on and North Korea has been an issue with new testing, do you have something on it? And on a bigger picture question, your president came during the last UNGA. Is there a particular reason he might not come? Because sometimes presidents come during the month. And do you expect him to come to UNGA this year? It's only a few months away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On non-proliferation, there is nothing on the regular agenda that will bring this issue to the agenda. Evidently, if something happens, as we have been seeing since the beginning of this year, very frequent meetings on particularly on North Korea, then evidently we would have to convene a meeting if something warrants it. But there's nothing, let's say, in the regular agenda foreseen on the non-proliferation agenda. The upcoming high-level week in September, the indications I have thus far is that the President, yes, he intends to come. We have a particular circumstance that elections will be held 2 weeks after the opening of the high-level week. So I couldn't assure you he will come, but he's planning to come at this stage. Okay.
Murad Hashim, Al Jazeera Arabic. On the killing of Al Jazeera correspondent Shireen.
I have no translation.
Oh, no, he's speaking in English. Right?
I'm sorry.
Murad Hashim, Al Jazeera Arabic.
I'm sorry.
Pronouncing my name in Arabic.
I'm sorry. I thought you were going to carry on in Arabic, and I was scared.
Thank you, Ambassador. So on the killing of the Al Jazeera correspondent Shireen Abu Aqla, on May 11, the Security Council issued a statement called for an immediate, thorough, transparent, and fair investigation into her murder. Also stressed the need to ensure accountability. 2 months, almost 2 months from that date, and still Israel refusing to respond. What's your comment on that?
Very, very clearly, I have no comment. I understand the investigations are underway. These investigations very often do take time. They are not easy investigations, but if there is need for us to reaffirm this call, we will do so. But we are, at this moment, waiting for those investigations to be concluded.
Israel haven't started the investigation yet, and they are ignoring the similar calls even from around the world.
we expect these investigations to be undertaken. I cannot go further than that at this stage.
Thank you, Ambassador. A quick follow-up on Ukraine. The meeting you are planning to have, apparently, I hear that it would be a private meeting. Does that mean that you don't plan to invite Ukraine at this meeting?
The format of the meeting has not been agreed upon yet. One of the possibilities is, yes, a private meeting is one of the possibilities, but a private meeting would allow for Ukraine to be invited to participate. So there's no a priori exclusion of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, I'll go first. So I just wanted a little more clarity on this food security meeting. So are you planning to time it around a confirmation that the grain deal has been agreed upon, or in anticipation? Because it just it's a little confusing as to what you intend to accomplish pending a grain deal. Thanks.
I mean, we don't have absolute clarity on this issue at this moment. I mean, we will be consulting with all the parties, including the Secretary General, who is personally involved in this process. And our objective is to get the Council engaged at the moment when it would be most helpful. If we are on the cusp of an agreement and it is felt by the interested parties that a nudge by the Council could help close the gap, then that would be a good moment. If the negotiations arrive at a good conclusion on their own, and the Council is called to ratify it, as it were, then that will be the choice. So at this moment, we'll have to wait and see how things progress.
Okay. Hi, thanks for this briefing. Afram Qusayfi from Arab News Daily. I have a question on Libya, and precisely on the delay in appointing a special envoy for Libya. What is causing this delay? Why can't council members agree on one? Can you tell us some of the main points of contention between council members around the envoy? And also a second part to the question, what are exactly the qualities and qualifications that you're looking for in an envoy for you all to agree on one? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I don't think it's entirely appropriate to ask the presidency, because the appointment is a recommendation made by the Secretary General when he identifies someone he believes is up to the task, and he requests the opinion of the Security Council. Now, why one or another member raises an objection, you would have to ask each one of them, because there's no specification. I mean, members will not come forward and say, I don't want this person because of this reason. He'll just say, I don't want him. So I cannot tell you why members object to certain appointments. And the qualities you want, someone who can be very forceful and independent in getting the mandate that is assigned to him done. Someone who will have the ability to talk with all the interested parties in that particular situation, and can do so independently. So I think these are the two main qualities that are sought. No, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ambassador. Kristen Salumi from Al Jazeera English. Wondering if you could elaborate more, also interested in the Ukraine meeting. When you talk about a result-oriented approach that doesn't assign blame, can you elaborate on what results you think the Council could achieve and how it could be more helpful in the situation? Thank you.
I'm to be honest, I don't know how much more I could add. What has frustrated us since the beginning is that the Council has had a number of meetings on different aspects of the conflict, These have all been public meetings in which there has been a lot of accusations and counter-accusations, and our feeling is that these have not really contributed in any measurable way to moving the quest for a solution forward. What we had thought of is taking one aspect that, as I said, is affecting not only the region but the entire world as a starting point of getting the people round the table and to stop the mutual recriminations and to talk about concrete steps. We could talk about examples like, the over-compliance on sanctions, which is making the import of grain more difficult. The sanctions on shipping companies, which are also making the transport of grain more difficult. Concrete ways. And as I said, we are not looking at assigning blame or complaining about the sanctions per se. These are decisions taken by members, which we can have opinions. Are they legal? Are they illegal? Should they be applied? Should not they be applied? But the important thing at this point is how can we get trade flowing from the producers to the people who need it, despite the sanctions. This was, the initial thought we had. How can we overcome the hurdles that are there to have a concrete? This is why I talk about the concrete result-oriented solution. And from there, hopefully, we could build on momentum to get other aspects of the crisis solved. I'm told I've run out of time, so tem gente fora.
Before we finish, maybe we have any questions from the web?
No. No? Tem? No. Okay.
On behalf of all of us, I'm sure we would greatly appreciate you coming to the stakeout mic often to brief us on what's happened in the council.
I will
Thank you.
try as much as possible. No promises. Thank you. One last one. I want you. Okay. I'm sorry, I missed
Mr.
someone.
Ambassador, I have a question, Mr. Ambassador, here on the web. If you allow me to, please.
Yes. I'm sorry. Can you just wait
Yes,
a minute?
Mr. Ambassador.
I'm told someone here has been asking for the floor for a long time. I apologize, I didn't see you. The mic is off.
Hi, Frank Uciardo from TRT World. I had a quick question about North Korea. Many experts expect there to be a nuclear test this month from North Korea. Would you be for increased sanctions on that country?
I didn't hear the last part.
Basically, most experts on North Korea and in South Korea are expecting a nuclear test from North Korea this month. Would you be for increased sanctions on North Korea if that happens?
I cannot prejudge what my government will decide if anything should happen. Brazil has unequivocally condemned each and every instance of violation of previous Security Council resolutions on non-proliferation by North Korea. So that stance, I think, is clear. What we would do on an eventual path forward or resolution, I cannot anticipate that. I've had to consult my capital.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the one from the web, very quickly.
Yeah. Is that with me, Mr. Ambassador?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Oscar Bolanos. I am from OMB News Latin America Network. And my question is, Mr. Ambassador, as you know, recently there was a shocking news report where at least 53 men, women, and some children died and being abandoned in a truck in San Antonio, Texas. And human trafficking, as you know, and migrant smuggling are global and widespread crimes that use men and women and children for this profit. So my question is, in humanity, on those incidents of migration and human trafficking combined, do you think that is an issue to bring out to the table to discuss, to strive for eradication of these crimes through the dismantling of the criminal enterprise that trade in people and conviction of the main perpetrators?
I think it is, yes, an issue that has to be brought to the table, but no, it's not an issue for the Security Council. This is not, I mean, for all the gravity of the situation, this is not a threat to international peace and security. So there are appropriate bodies, the Human Rights Council, the IOM, that could deal with this in a much more effective way. In many ways, there is a parallel on how Brazil sees the issue of climate change. We are 100% behind the effort to combat climate change, but we do not believe this is a threat to international peace and security. Yes, there may be impacts on specific situations of threats to peace and security, and the Sahel in Africa, I think, is a very clear example of how climate change contributes to the instability in that region. But we do not believe that climate change as a horizontal issue is one that warrants discussion in the Security Council. There are inclusive bodies, the UNFCCC, which incorporates each and every member of the international community, which has a long history of consensus-based decision-making in striving to combat climate change, is the appropriate forum to deal with this. And I'm just being reminded, if you look at the last report of the IPCC, there's a very clear mention that the evidence that climate change is a factor in in conflicts is weak at best. It's very weak. So this underscores our belief that climate change should be dealt in the appropriate fora and dealt with only when it has a clear and measurable impact on a specific security situation in the Security Council. Is there a follow-up question on that? Okay.
Yes, this is the last question.
Okay.
President-elect Gustavo Petro, he says that one of his priorities will be the fight against climate change. So what is the Brazil's reaction on this when you know the deforestation in the rainforest of Amazon is increasing still day by day and putting in danger the wildlife and all the system in the region?
Simple, and it goes on the same line. We are firmly committed to combating climate change, and we accept that deforestation in the Amazon is a problem, but it is one of the many problems that are cause of climate change. The global greenhouse gas emissions around the world are much more impactful on climate change than the deforestation of the Amazon, for example. But what we feel is, and despite, taking into account the severity and the gravity of the issue, the Security Council is not the best place to discuss this. This is an issue that affects each and every member of the international community. And so each and every member should be at the table to discuss it, and not in the Security Council where only 15 countries are represented. That's the basic position. Okay? I've overstayed my welcome. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending, for all the questions, and for the interest in our presidency. Good afternoon.